Well, welcome to the Daily Devo. This is Pastor Stephen McAbee. I'm so thankful today that you are here online and watching, and pray that this will be a great encouragement to you and to your family. I want to come today to Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, and Jesus said, "But about the day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Now let's kind of back up way back in history. 1843, a guy by the name of William Miller. He lived in New England, and he was a follower of Christ, a believer in the second coming, yet he made a great error. He decided that he knew just when Christ would come back, and he had gone to the books, he had made his calculations, he had studied as hard as he knew to study and as best as he could, and he was very confident that he was right. He had spent hours of calculations, days and months, collecting all the data, making no mistakes, and coming just to the right calculations. He was very confident of his conclusions. And William Miller decided that he was going to date the day, the year, almost to the very hour. And on March the 21st, 1843, he announced to his congregation that Jesus Christ would return. And according to the reports, a very timely comet was fostering delusions, and his followers prepared an ascension robe, and then at midnight they made their way to the mountains. They went through the community, made their way to the mountains. They climbed up the top of the trees, and they waited in expectation that Jesus Christ would return and come for them and take them home. Their idea was that they were going to go to the mountains and the treetops to be closer and just as close as possible, so they would have less of a journey in the air as they met the Lord. But needless to say, the day came and the day went, and the Lord did not return for his saints, and the Millerites, as they became known as, went home for a late breakfast on March 22nd. They walked through the towns holding their ascension robes, and the drunks of the town were jeering and making fun of their foolishness. This was an obvious disappointment and setback in the life of Mr. Miller and his heart and his followers, but he immediately went back to his studies to figure out and try to understand exactly where he went wrong. He studied the scriptures, he paid particular attention to all the things that he had uncovered in all of his calculations, and to his surprise, he made a mistake. You think? But he concluded and deduced that he was 1 year off. So he went back to his followers and he assured them that this time he had all the data correct, and that 1 year from the original date the Lord was going to return. And Mr. Miller began just to encourage and reinforce their hopes and expectations, and he did all that he could. And yet again, several of his followers made their way through town with their ascension robes, climbed the mountains, climbed the trees, only to be disappointed. One might think that the story would end right there, but it does not, because Mr. Miller went back to his studies. He took his pen and his pencil and his Bible, and for a third time he reviewed all of his work, and he realized that he had not made a 1 year mistake, but he had made a 2 year mistake. And while this seems a very unbelievable story, it is quite true. He went back to his followers. He reassured them that there was this time no mistake, and this was the final prediction, that 1 year from the first, or 2 years from the first, they would have the return of Christ. And so his faithful followers went through town, climbed the mountains, climbed the trees. And you and I both know if the Lord's returned, then you and I are in serious trouble, because this is 2020. The Lord did not return according to the schedule of Mr. Miller. And what happened next was pretty sad, because Mr. Miller's followers gave up hope. Many of them turned away not only from their teacher, but also from the Lord. The question I'm going to ask today, and the question I'm going to try to answer over the next several days and maybe even weeks on this Daily Devo, is this: can we know the Lord's going to return? When will the Lord return? How can we know if the Lord returns? What are the signs of the times, as we've often been told? Are there? What are they? And we're going to answer some of these questions. But every time we turn around, someone's trying to pin down a date. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses have done it time and time again. For the last 150 years, the Watchtower, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, has tried to pinpoint a date. And how many times over the past 2 or 3 weeks has someone come to me or been on the phone with someone and they said, Pastor, is this the end? Is this COVID-19 crisis? Is this the end of times? Could it be? Might it be? Well, I remind you, we need to be careful because Jehovah's Witnesses predicted the return of Christ in 1874 and in 1914 and 1918 and 1925, 1944, 1975. Here's the deal. I've been studying eschatology since I was like 13 years old. It's almost been 32 years, as I'm 45 today. And even with all of my studies, I'm not confident in everything that I've studied. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of room for interpretation. And I'm still learning. But over the next several days, I want to encourage you on this online study as we return to this idea of the return of Christ, the second coming of Christ. It's a very important issue, subject matter, and being talked about a lot in a lot of places. So I want to try to give some conversational pieces to it. We're going to go to Matthew 24, and I want you to look with me and study with me the Olivet Discourse. Jesus gave many sermons in the book of Matthew, and this is one of them. In fact, this discourse is the longest discourse in the book of Matthew. Scholars say it's the longest answer to any question that Jesus was ever asked. Therefore, I think it's pretty important. It's at least the longest question recorded in Scriptures. 97 verses was devoted to the answer that the disciples asked. So go back in Matthew chapter 24, 25. Look at the question that the disciples asked. What was that question? Well, you come back tomorrow on the Daily Devo, and we'll learn a little bit more from Matthew 24 and Matthew 25. Thanks again. Have a blessed day, and know that we're always here for you. If you have any questions, you can reach me at encountergodatme.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I'm there. Ready for Revival is my Twitter handle, and we look forward to connecting with you and talking to you soon. God bless.